You believe in a physical or interdimensional entity, the devil, Satan, the old serpent, but whether you don't, the elite believe in it and are manifesting it on this planet. I'm your host, Alex Jones, and a lot of people ask me, Alex, I've been listening to your show 20 years. More and more you talk about God, more and more you talk about the devil, and it's because I know a lot more than I knew 20 years ago. And I know that the fake establishment churches are there to discredit Christ. And I'm here to tell you that Christ is my refuge. I'm not one of these Pharisees up on the hill praying publicly, telling you how great I am. I don't claim to be the best person in the world. I mean, quite frankly, compared to most people, people say, you're so moral, you're so nice, you're so friendly, you're so hardworking. You know, still, though, I can see into my own heart. I know that I have issues with my conscience. I'm not up here criticizing anybody. I'm not judging you if you've had an abortion. I'm simply saying the globalists are lying to you. It is a human life. It is about dehumanization. It does increase your cancer risk. And for God's sakes, don't have a second or third term one, whatever you do. They're killing tens of thousands of viable babies every year. It's not debatable. And then if you go out and you protest for pro-life, every time I've done it, and we should do it more often. I hadn't done it in years. We went out and did it last week. Serpents arrive, hissing and saying, we love Satan. And then you go, man, this is real. Because it's not just crazies. I mean, it's the same all over the country, all over the world. They could be black, they could be white, they could be Hispanic, they could be whatever. Actually, I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever... It's a strange anomaly. I have to think about it more before I talk about it. You don't see a lot of Satanist Hispanics show up talking about how they want to kill babies. I'm sure they exist, but that's an interesting anomaly. They're usually white or black. I don't know what that means. Just in my experience, that's what I've seen. I guess it's a cultural thing. It's too strong not to kill kids, which is a good thing in that culture. But it's interesting to study anthropology, sociology, to try to get your mind around all this. But our opposition are evil totalitarians by any name you put on them. As I've said, Jungian psychology, you know, is it a mass consciousness archetype that they resonate towards? I don't want to call it the dark side because it's beyond the dark side. It's just the death side. All those that hate me love death, Christ said. And just the more I learn, the more I get deep into this, and now I read the Bible, didn't understand it 25 years ago, it all makes sense now. That's what Christ talks about. He says the general population can hear this and they're not going to understand what I have to say because they're not ready to hear it or they don't have discernment. Or they've turned down the truth so many times when it was obvious that your brain, when you do that, just turns you over to lies. Your brain's a computer. You sit there and feed lies into it enough. I've had folks debate with me that Common Core is good, and it teaches 2 + 2 = 5. Fritz Springmeier joins us till 5 minutes to the next hour. I tend to always do that overdrive now just to finish up any other news. At the bottom of the hour, I'll get into Obama administration asserts domination over creeks, streams, wetlands, ditches, even big puddles. And that ties into these executive orders and PDDs I want to go over with you. That's Presidential Decision Directive. His book was out of print. I thought it was so interesting because I read this probably, I say 15 years ago. I read this book like 18 years ago when it first came out. And I just, quite frankly, read it and showed friends and thought it was humorous. Then I met Fritz Springmeier, interviewed him. He seemed to know a lot about Bohemian Grove that I had seen that nobody else knew. And then a lot of what was in his book, stuff that I thought was just crazy, like the royal families, the line of Count Dracula, and you know, and they've got dead babies buried all over their property. And then Prince Charles comes out and says, "I am the line of Dracula, and I'm moving to Dracula Castle, and he started our whole British royal family, and we're not even British, and I live in Transylvania half the year now." And the media goes, "We tested their genetics, they're Count Dracula, and we dug up a bunch of dead babies on the property." It's kind of like David Icke's like, Jimmy Savile is a pedophile and has dungeons where he tortures kids to death. And I'm like, delay that, delay that. This is like 14 years ago, and then it all comes out 12 years later. So, I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. When people say wild, over-the-top stuff, and then it starts happening, I really start paying attention. So I said, hey, I'll help you reprint this book. So I don't want to say I'm the publisher of it. Fritz Springmeier is, but at least InfoWars did show up somewhere on the fake bin Laden body doubles reading list. In fact, we put that New York Times reported on. We put the list up there. None dare call it conspiracy, stuff like that. Classics, I guess, to demonize the liberty movement. But bin Laden supposedly was reading Bloodlines of the Illuminati, available at InfoWarsStore.com exclusively. We also sell it on Amazon, but it's all from here. Bloodlines of the Illuminati, big coffee table book. And it is something else. Because, yeah, 18 years ago it first came out. He's had a newer edition. I read it, rolled my eyes. Even though some of it I knew was accurate, it's over the top. It is over the top. InfoWarsStore.com. You help support what Fritz is doing, what we're doing. The Committee of 300 by Coleman. In fact, let me read some of the stuff that's there. A Brief Guide to Understanding Islam, America's Strategic Blunders, America's War on Terrorism, Al-Qaeda's Online Media Strategies, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, Greg Pallas, The Best Money Enemy Can Buy, The Best Enemy Money Can Buy, Anthony Sutton, Black Box Voting, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, Bounding the Global War on Terror, Checking Iran's Nuclear Ambitions, Christianity and Islam in Spain, Civil Disobedience, Civil Democratic Islam, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. A bunch of our guests are on here. Conspirators Hierarchy, The Committee of 300, John Coleman, Crossing the Rubicon, Michael Rupert. There's other stuff in there. But they won't release a supposed porn list. So I haven't talked to Fritz since this came out. I haven't talked to him probably in 6 months on air. About time to get Fritz Springmeier back on. He's been a political prisoner, no criminal record until they set him up for bank robberies of all things. I mean, they could do that to me tomorrow, folks. I'm not going to go over the whole case, but it wasn't true, obviously. Successful author, more than 20 books in print. And they just kept raiding him, and then said he was a bank robber and had a confidential informant say it. So he's a true political prisoner as well. He's got a website where you can find out more of his information, pentracks.com. Fritz, great to have you on with us, my friend. What is your take on the bin Laden situation? What do you think about this?
Well, as you know, back in May 2011, we were told that SEAL Team 6 raided and shot him in the head at night and then dumped his body into the ocean, and that there was this special extraction team that grabbed up a lot of stuff, shoved it into duffel bags, and they got out of there. And then, as you were predicting, you said, this whole thing is fishy, and they're going to kill SEAL Team 6. And then in August 6th, as we know, later that year, they're killed, and just like you had been saying. And so my question is, in light of all this happening clear back in 2011, now why in May 2015 have they come out with this list? Ostensibly, it was because they had this authorization bill by Congress saying that the Director of National Intelligence had to look at all of the documents and come up with some kind of ruling. But it's really strange. Why now? And so when CBS contacted me about this, I said, why are they now saying this? We've got Jade Helm going on. We've got all of these things happening. It's interesting, the timing that right at this point in time, they decide to come out with my book being on the reading list.
Well, we're going to come back and find out why you think it is, but one reason, I mean, obviously they want to demonize, but I want to get your take. Separately, it had come out with Cy Hirsch that the raid was basically fake, and then more and more documents were coming out, so they put all this out to make it look like there was something legitimate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of questions about how legitimate this is, and not only about the raid, but what they found. We've heard Lieutenant General Flynn supposedly was opposing the Obama administration's take on the documents that were supposedly found. The Obama administration is saying it's showing that Al-Qaeda has been defeated, and we should, be excited that we have this great victory.
Sure. Stay there. We're going to get Fritz Springmeier's take on this. He's a smart fellow. Stay with us. Going back to Fritz Springmeier, best-selling author. Then he was a political prisoner, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. And we were getting to why does he think, because look, the Bin Laden raid's fake. It's his body double. We know that from the Navy SEALs. I said they'll probably kill them all to cover it up. They blew their helicopter up. This is not fun to be this guy and have Stratfor, the CIA, saying they've got to basically discredit me and deal with me. If the fact is, like Jim Garrison said from the Kennedy deal, you got to be so big and in the sunlight's my only hope. Plus, I'm just promoting freedom and liberty, so there's a lot of good people in government as well. But this is a dangerous situation. I want people to understand that. Fritz, what did you put in this book that made him so mad, and why do you think they've now had the fake Bin Laden say that he was reading your book?
Well, it's a good book, and it describes who the decision makers are, the important decision makers in the United States. So anybody who's wanting to understand how things are operating is going to want to read the book. Whether that list that was published on May 21st is legitimate or not, it's a good question. Because, you and I, we have to operate on what seems to be the most likeliest story. Sometimes we're given information that's fishy. This whole thing about assassinating bin Laden was really fishy. Over in the Middle East, people, it was commonly known that he had died. And then there was this whole thing with Tim Osman, as you know, and Gunderson saying he took Tim Osman around and on and on. So just what is the truth? And if it's true that they did not assassinate Osama bin Laden, then that means that all these book lists and everything is hype. And if it's hype, what's the agenda here? Is it to link supposed conspiracy theorists with terrorism? John Coleman's Committee of 300's in the same genre as my Bloodlines of the Illuminati, showing who decision makers are. And now the Committee of 300 currently, from my information that I have, has been superseded by something else. But the fact remains that this is a book showing who the decision makers have been, and that would be important for anybody who was trying to have an impact on world affairs. Again, if what we believe is accurate, that this raid is all a hoax, then it really begs the question, why are they coming up with this? And we're now facing this Jade Helm, as you know, which is this Joint Assistance for Deployment and Extraction, where as I'm going to interrupt myself by saying one thing I really appreciated was you've been telling the American people that we have lost the Constitution, we are in a police state, and this is what they need to recognize. Whether Jade Helm is simply an exercise in bringing in martial law, or whether something will happen and it will kick into an actual operation, who knows? Nobody has a crystal ball at this point. But it's definitely an exercise to train the troops in bringing martial law into the United States.
And it's definitely the biggest I've ever seen.
Yeah, and when you have something like this happening, then you have to wonder if this book list that's trying to link some of the leading conspiracy historians — I'm a historian, by the way, not a theorist — when you read that Bloodlines of the Illuminati book, you'll see it's just chock full of all kinds of history. Genealogy charts, for instance, there's a genealogy chart showing how 25 American presidents are closely related. This is not theory, this is history.
By the way, everything in your book on those areas later came out. I mean, your book did trailblaze. When did you first publish Bloodlines?
In 1995. It was interesting. I believe it was like 1998 that there was a young teenage girl that put some of this genealogy together, and she became a national